I've heard so much from many of you that you aren't happy that I'm doing this interview, and many of you are thrilled that I'm doing the interview. So let me just kind of set the stage as to how this interview came to be. By the way, if I didn't say it, tonight, Lori Vallow Daybell is here on Courtroom Insider. I actually started communicating with Lori back in 2020. I reached out to her on the tablet when she was in the Madison County Jail in Rexburg. Inmates communicate via tablet. And I even sent her a letter in the mail, and she never wrote me back. In fact, the money that I put on her account to respond to me, she used, but I don't know who she used it on. Actually, I probably do know her husband, Chad Daybell. And that happened back in 2020. I continued to go ahead and make contact with her, try to make contact with her to the point that I sent a letter through her attorneys on the day she was found guilty in Idaho, and nothing. Well, after she was transferred to the prison in Pocatello, I remember one morning I was on a walk and I said, I'm just going to reach out to her again and see. So I set up an account. I sent a message. I said, I'd love to talk with you on or off the record. Let me know. And I sent the message and didn't think anything of it. That was like on a Tuesday or Wednesday. I then, that weekend, my son and I were going away for a boys' weekend away. And I told my wife before we left, I'm like, finally, for the first time in years, I can go away and I don't have to think about Lori Daybell. Because every time I'd go out of town, something would break in the case. My son and I left town, had a good Friday night at the arcade playing, go back to the hotel, go to sleep. I wake up in the morning, I look at my phone and it says, you have a message from Lori Vallow. And I'm like, what? And it wouldn't open on my phone. And so I had to grab my computer and open it up. And Lori said, hi, something to the effect of, hi, Nate, I would be willing to talk with you as a friend off the record. I'm telling all you this now because she has told me I can share certain details. Many of you, that off the record is something that reporters use to maybe get a source to open up a little bit more. It's information that we promise not to divulge to the public if it's off the record. If it's on the record, we can divulge it all. And often reporters will go off the record to try to build a relationship with someone, like I did with Lori, to try to get more information maybe, or to try to use that information to go investigate or get something like that. And so Lori and I proceeded to talk. She said, I want to talk to you as a friend. We had never met, but we were frequently messaging. And it was, to be honest, the messaging back and forth was pretty bizarre. It was like we were old friends, and we talked about her recipes, her buttercream frosting that she makes on cupcakes, and it was just a little unusual. And she asked me to come and see her at the prison. No cameras, no phone, just to go meet with her because she needed me to do something for her. And so I made the request. She wouldn't tell me what it is. I made the request to the jail and to the prison, and you have to fill out a form, and they have to approve visits. And in the slot where it said, tell us how you know the inmate, the resident, I said, we met in Hawaii because we did. And my request was denied. And Lori wasn't happy about that. She went to the warden and told the warden, Nate Eaton needs to come and see me. And the warden said no. Lori and I continued to communicate. She was then moved to Arizona, and our communication became less and less frequent. I would reach out to her. She would see me in court. And that's just kind of where things went. Well, then a week ago Friday, I have an app on my phone that I use to communicate, not just with her, but with other inmates. It's kind of weird, I guess, but it's my job. I get a message from her out of the blue. Oh man, you all are sending in questions like crazy. By the way, Peggy Jepson, our comment moderator, Peggy's here. Everybody say hi to Peggy. She does a great job reading your questions and sending in your comments. So far, 37 of you have sent questions. I hope we can get through these all. Let me tell you what Lori sent me a week ago Friday. Caught me off guard. She said, She said, "Okay, so if we," mind you, we had not communicated in like 6 or 7 months. And she said, "Okay, so if we do an interview, will you play the whole thing unedited? How will that work? And will you bring me M&Ms?" We had talked about M&Ms in our first conversation when we were kind of getting to know each other, like what's your favorite candy and things like that. And she said M&Ms. I believe she said peanut M&Ms. So I wrote back, shocked. Okay, yes, we'll air the whole thing unedited, which I would have done anyway. And let me give you the caveat. I am going to air the whole thing unedited tonight, but I am going to fact check after the interview. I have a list of claims Lori made right here that I'm going to fact check for you. I went on to talk about how I could come in person, how we could do the interview on Zoom, whatever, or through the tablet, whatever she wanted. She wrote back, "After being sick for so long, I could really use M&Ms." And then we talked about scheduling, and then she said, "Let me know what times work best for you." And we just kind of went back and forth. She wrote me that I reached. Let me tell you how this works. I reached out to the PIO, the sheriff's office. Lori gets so many messages. She tells me she gets so many messages from people all over asking for interviews. Lori actually has to tell the jail, "I want to interview with so and so." She has to give them her request. It's not like anyone can set it up with her. She has to request, because I asked the jail and they said no, she needs to request it and she hasn't requested you. So I told her, "You need to go in, you need to request me." So she did. And then she said, "I will request with my sergeant an interview on Thursday at 11 for 1 hour and an interview on Friday at 11 for an hour." She wanted 2 hours. "I would like to cover living with autism, living with chronic illness, pancreatitis, cruelty of the family court system, women facing the death penalty, unfairness of the judicial system, strengthening women through family tragedy. Let me know if you are still interested." Well, of course I was still interested, but this is my interview with her, not her interview with me. And I thought for sure we can touch on some of these topics, but as you'll see tonight, we did not touch on really any of them, or very few. So Monday comes around, nothing, no word. Tuesday, I get an email from the jail saying, "Your interview with Lori Vallow Daybell will happen Thursday at 10 a.m. You have 30 minutes. You have 30 minutes to set up and 30 minutes for the interview." We immediately started to book flights, arrange travel, and we were on a plane the next night, Wednesday night. We went over to the jail on Thursday morning. We did set up, and in walked Lori. Now, in the room with Lori, with me, Lori, our cameraman, Jordan, our photographer, Jordan, the amazing, extraordinary Jordan, who fixes everything, a producer who I'll tell you about after the interview. Lori's private investigator, Jeff White, was there. Her paralegal, Anna, was there. And then the PIO for the sheriff's office, along with 2 deputies from the jail. They were all in the room, and nothing was off limits. There were no topics off limits. The challenge as an interviewer with someone like Lori is maintaining control of the situation, asking questions, and not dwelling too long on one topic, because she will. And you'll see tonight that I had to bounce around to topics, otherwise she would have sucked up the whole time. And that's what I did. I bounced around from this topic over here. Also, you want to be courteous. You want to be professional. I know many of you have said, "Why didn't you punch her in the eye? Why didn't you punch her in the face? Why would you bring her M&Ms?" Which I did. And you'll see what happened with the M&Ms at the end of the interview. Also, another element to all of this is that we were doing the interview on Lori's birthday. I did not know it was her birthday until the night before. So you will see I did wish her a happy birthday in the beginning to try to disarm her. And you know, Different people have different interviewing tactics. I know many of you are going to, after this interview, are going to write me and say, you are a pathetic interviewer. You were too soft on her. You let her get away with this. I've heard it. Believe me, my neighbor came over a few days ago and said, why would you interview her? And I explained it to her, and we're still friends. But the reason I interviewed her, for those of you asking, is I'm a reporter. It's my job to ask questions. It's my job to try to figure out what people are thinking. Is she going to give me the honest truth? Probably not. No, she didn't. I believe she was honest in many of her questions. I believe she was not. I know she was not in many others. It's my job to ask questions. Now, it would be irresponsible of me if I had her on every single night. But to interview her once now to get this and then maybe go in depth down the road, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see.